Welcome to the Elementary ELA Early Release Day PD, October 1st. Our first grade session norms are stated here. As we spend time in the content today, we need to make sure that we keep our mission, vision, and goals in mind. My name is Amanda Smith, and I'm your first grade curriculum specialist. Our learning outcomes today are: I can explain the overarching standards of Module 2 and how they are practiced and assessed, and I can explain the depth of major standards into which they are practiced within Module 2. Here are our materials for today, and let's jump right in. So, what's up in the sky? A study of the sun, moon, and stars. That's where we're headed. Our guiding question for this module is: what patterns can we observe in the sky? I also want you to make note of how this module connects to science. So it is closely connected to the first grade science standards for Earth's place in the universe. But before we jump into content, I want us to take a minute to level set on some terms. We hear the words rigor and depth of knowledge a lot, but it can be tricky to make sense of these terms. So what is rigor? Well, rigor is the cognitive demand and productive struggle involved in learning, requiring students to think deeply, question assumptions, and apply their knowledge to new situations. So then, what is the depth of knowledge, or DOK? DOK is a model developed by researcher Norman Webb that categorizes tasks by the level of cognitive complexity, or the mental processing required to answer a question or solve a problem. Where rigor is the student experience, DOK is the instructional framework. Today we will be using Dr. Karen Hess's work on cognitive rigor. We are using this framework as Karen's work is referenced in many excellent educational resources, explored in both undergraduate pre-service teacher training courses, and applied in numerous research studies. So let's start with Unit 1, the journey of the standards. So Unit 1 is the comprehension foundation. It ensures students can understand story structure and retell events before moving into informational text work. In Unit 1, students launch their study of the sun, moon, and stars through stories. They engage in close read-alouds and focused read-alouds like Summer Sun Rising and Papa Please Get the Moon for Me. And they practice asking and answering questions about key details. Role play helps them act out characters, settings, and events to strengthen comprehension. The standards focus on RL 1.2, RL 1.3, and RL 1.7. Students retell stories with key details, describe characters, settings, and major events, and use illustrations to support their understanding. They also build early writing and speaking skills through W1.6 and SL 1.2 with attention to conventions in L 1.1 and L 1.2. All of this prepares them for the end of unit assessment, where they listen to Kitten's first full moon and demonstrate understanding of story elements and events through words and pictures. So let's dive into RL 1.2. RL 1.2 is a high-leverage standard for Unit 1. It asks students to retell stories, including key details, and demonstrate understanding of their central message or lesson. This standard includes several essential skills and concepts like identifying the characters, settings, and events, determining the key details that explain who, where, and what happened in the story, identifying and sequencing events in the beginning, middle, and end of the story, understanding the central message or lesson of the story, and in order to do this, students will need to be able to support it with details. The natural DOK of RL 1.2 is Level 2, Skills and Concepts, because students must recall, summarize, and organize key details, then explain how they connect to a central message. You can find this on your Hess's matrix at the intersection of Understand and DOK 2. Students practice RL 1.2 throughout Unit 1 with the text Summer Sun Rising, Papa Please Get the Moon for Me, and Why the Sun and the Moon Live in the Sky. After rereading a page in the book in Lesson 3, the teacher asks, "What is the boy doing? What is the sun doing?" These questions help students collect key details across pages to prepare for a full beginning, middle, and end retail and central message discussion. So they align to RL 1.2 as retail preparation. The DOK level is 1 because students are simply recalling a single event or action from the page. No sequencing or synthesis yet. In lessons 3 through 7, students participate in a close read aloud of Summer Sun Rising and complete response sheets to sequence events from beginning, middle, and end. If students are engaged in retelling orally or through drawing or writing, this task is a DOK 2 because they are synthesizing multiple details into a coherent sequence. In Lesson 7, students participate in a close read aloud session. The teacher asks, "What is the story mostly about?" Students are summarizing the main idea of the story using key details: the boy's daily routine, the sun's movement. This requires organizing events and details into a single coherent statement, a skill beyond simple recall, but not yet requiring strategic thinking. Therefore, it is a DOK level 2. Then the teacher also asks, "What are the big ideas we learned from reading the story?" This question asks students to synthesize across the entire text and generalize what they learned about the connection between daily activities and the sun's position. Students must integrate multiple events, morning, midday, evening, to identify a pattern, which is higher level reasoning and strategic thinking, which is DOK 3. It's important to remember that the students must be doing the cognitive work for these tasks to be rigorous. RL 1.2 is assessed on the end of unit assessment by having students identify the main character and setting, and also retell Kitten's first full moon, including key details from the beginning, middle, and end. Teachers can collect evidence of progress toward RL 1.2 throughout the unit by using turn and talk retells, reading, speaking, and listening checklist, the reading literature checklist. They could sequence picture cards and any exit tickets that ask students to share what happened first, next, and last. So here are also a few just-in-time supports available for RL 1.2, but you will also want to read the lesson narrative for additional scaffolds and ideas. Now let's jump into Unit 2. This is our knowledge building unit. This unit provides science content knowledge and speaking and listening practice needed to describe sky patterns accurately. In Unit 2, students shift to informational text and science content with what makes day and night and does the sun sleep. They explore patterns in the sky, the day and night cycle, moon phases, and stars through read-alouds, writing in their sky notebooks, and hands-on experiences. The standards here emphasize RI 1.1 and RI 1.2, asking and answering questions and identifying main topics and key details. Students also work with RI 1.4, 1.6, and 1.7 to clarify vocabulary and distinguish information from text and illustrations. Oral and written language standards are included and are woven throughout as students record and share observations. This learning builds directly to the Unit 2 assessment, which is a science talk, where students use evidence from their notes to discuss observable patterns in the sky, showing mastery of both content and speaking and listening standards. Let's unpack RI 1.2 in Unit 2. RI 1.2, students identify the main topic and retell key details of a text. This standard includes several essential skills and concepts, such as identifying the main topic of the entire text, demonstrating understanding of key details, retelling key details that explain or support the main topic. They need to understand the difference between important details and unrelated information, and they need to do this by referencing the text. The natural DOK of RI 1.2 is level 2 because students must summarize, classify, and organize details to determine the main topic and retell information learned. You can find this on your reading listening Hess matrix at the intersection of Understand and DOK 2. Students practice RI 1.2 throughout Unit 2. In Lesson 4, students answer these two questions. What does the sun look like? And what does the moon look like? Using pictures and words to show their thinking. Even though students are using sentence frames and teacher support, they are doing the thinking, choosing adjectives, applying them correctly, and organizing their ideas into sentences and illustrations. This task sits at the natural DOK level of RI 1.2 because it has students organize and represent key details about the topic in writing and drawing. SL 1.1 asks students to participate in collaborative conversations with diverse partners. This standard includes 3 essential skills: following agreed upon rules for discussion, building on others' talk and conversations by responding to the comments of others through multiple exchanges, and asking questions to clear up any confusion about the topics and texts under discussion. The natural DOK is dependent on the topic and the student responses. It doesn't have a fixed DOK level. The standard itself describes the process skills for collaboration, but the cognitive demand varies based on what students are discussing. SL 1.1 is a vehicle standard. It enables access to content at various cognitive levels. The rigor comes from what students are asked to discuss and how deeply they must engage, not from the collaborative format itself. Students practice SL 1.1 throughout Unit 2 as they engage in structured conversations like think, pair, share, back-to-back and face-to-face, and the science talk to share observations, build on peers' ideas using sentence stems, and use evidence from their Sky notebooks and text to support their thinking. In Lesson 8, when participating in a science talk, multiple exchanges of dialogue is encouraged. Students connect ideas, confirm or challenge thinking, and use their notes as evidence. The multiple exchanges are not just about talking more, they're about moving the thinking forward. So, looking at RI 1.2 and SL 1.1, the assessment, the checks for understanding, and the just-in-time supports. Student understanding is assessed through a science talk, which serves as the end-of-unit assessment. This science talk provides an opportunity for students to synthesize and share their learning about patterns of the sun, moon, and stars. The assessment focuses on speaking and listening standards. As students participate in a collaborative conversation, they follow agreed-upon norms, they build on another's ideas, and RI 1.2 is embedded in the assessment as students identify the main topic, which are the observable patterns in the sky. And they retell key details from informational texts and class observations to support their ideas. Teachers use a checklist or rubric to evaluate how well students use evidence, contribute to the discussion, and demonstrate comprehension of key science concepts. Throughout the unit, you will want to use the reading informational checklist and the speaking and listening checklist to check for understanding. Also, check out the bit.ly at the bottom right-hand corner of this screen. It houses a just-in-time supports document that calls out supports you may choose to use for each lesson in Unit 2. All right, moving into Unit 3. This is the knowledge transfer. Students apply narrative and science understanding to produce poems that demonstrate comprehension of what the sun and the moon's patterns are throughout the day. In Unit 3, students continue engaging in close read-alouds and focused discussions during the first half of the unit to deepen their understanding of what happens during the day and night. They study what the sun sees, what the moon sees very closely. First as readers building comprehension, then as writers analyzing it as a mentor text. RL 1.1 helps students ask and answer questions about the text and illustrations, while RL 1.10 ensures that they interact meaningfully with grade level prose and poetry. These reading experiences build schema for narrative structure, descriptive language, and how authors use repetition and rhythm, all of which students will apply to their own writing. Throughout these lessons, students work with adjectives using the interactive word wall, class chart, shared writing experiences. This explicit vocabulary work equips them with precise and descriptive words that make their poems vivid and detailed. The writing work is anchored in 1.3, 1.5, and 1.6 as students plan, draft, and revise verses of narrative poems with teacher support. They respond to peer feedback and strengthen their work through revision and editing. SL 1.1 and SL 1.4 emphasized as students share observations about the sun and moon, collaborate with peers, and present their writing clearly. The language standards support grammar, punctuation, and spelling throughout the drafting and revision process. This learning builds to the Unit 3 end of unit assessment, where students independently write a 3-verse poem, What the Sun Sees, describing what happens at different times of the day. They revise and edit their work for the performance task and celebrate their learning by presenting their polished poems to classmates and families. In W1.3, students are asked to write narratives in which they recount 2 or more appropriately sequenced events. They include some details regarding what happened, use temporal transition words to signal event order, and provide some sense of closure. This standard includes 2 substandards and many embedded skills. Recount 2 or more appropriately sequenced events, sequence the piece in a logical order with a clear beginning, middle, and end. Bring the main character to life with details, thoughts, and feelings and actions. Use temporal words to signal the order of events. Construct an ending that provides closure. Use a graphic organizer or oral rehearsal to plan the story before writing, and make clear and complete revisions and edits to work based on feedback. The natural DOK of W1.3 sits somewhere between levels 2 and 3, depending on where students fall in the writing progression. For this writing task, it sits at a level 2. When students use a graphic organizer with prompts, the work stays at DOK2 because they are organizing and describing key details, but not yet making independent choices about structure or revising for impact. The organizer scaffolds the thinking for them, which keeps the task at a skills and concepts level. Students practice W1.3 throughout Unit 3. Throughout the unit, it moves from analyzing What the Moon Sees poem to a teacher-modeled retellings, then to guided shared writing, then to independent drafting and revision. The unit scaffolds students towards producing complete narratives with ordered events, descriptive details, temporal words, and closure. Students demonstrate mastery of W1.3 by writing the narrative poem. They meet L1.1 expectations by consistently using adjectives to describe the sun. And for L1.2, mastery is shown when students correctly spell most words. They use available tools to support spelling and apply correct punctuation. This includes periods, question marks, exclamation marks, correct capitalization of dates, names, the letter I, and sentence beginnings. Throughout the unit, you will want to check for understanding when you confer with students and give them specific feedback that will move their writing forward. On the screen, you will also find some samples of just-in-time supports for writing. Some of these can be found in the PACE toolkit, and others can be found on All Things Literacy. Now it's your turn. You may want to pause the video here and with your PLC, select a different standard from Module 2 to unpack and follow these steps. All right, let's look at some resources. I want to make sure that you know about the weekly tidbits. Be sure to check them out for both modules and skills block. These tidbits highlight key standards, learning targets, checks for understanding, and just-in-time supports that you can use right away in your classroom. There are 3 easy ways to access them. You can subscribe to the first grade listserv using the form linked in this deck. You can subscribe to my YouTube playlist for quick video overviews, or you can star the public slide deck so that you can have instant access to the slides whenever you need it. You will also want to take some time to revisit the iReady guidance. There are 3 ways to use the iReady resources after administering the Universal Screener. The first way is the platform-created learning pathway, and you can use this outside of whole group core time to support the current level of performance on iReady. You can use the teacher assigned lessons outside of whole group core time to support on grade level work. You may use this during morning work, during skills differentiated core time, flex days, and then there's the comprehension and vocabulary intervention. And this is something that you would use during WIN time, intervention time. Check out the flex day guidance here when you get a chance, and here. So our next steps, I want to make sure that you have time to fill out your knowledge-based questions form. When you finish with it, when you log into that bit.ly, fill it out, and when you finish with it, the bit.ly link for the My Talent credit and attendance form will pop up. Be sure that you fill in the appropriate information that's located on the right-hand side of the slide deck. Make sure that your employee ID is added in correctly so that you can get credit for today. Thank you so much for joining me.